There's a question here, and then there, and then here.
Roger, forgive a rather naive question, but while you were talking and reading, the thought just crossed my mind that the more the Israelis make incursions onto Palestinian land by building settlements, that actually they're reducing the likelihood of there ever being a two-state solution, unless all Palestinians could be fitted into the Gaza Strip, and therefore that the converse, a one-state solution, may actually be what they're forcing things towards. I mean, is that crazy?
Well, it's not crazy in the sense that the Israeli governments, successive Israeli governments, whether Likud or Labour, have worked against the feasibility of a Palestinian state being established in the occupied territories. This has been always their aim. The Likud, they had a different vision of where the settlements should be between the Likud and the Labour, but both Likud and Labour, which are the two main parties in Israel, have been united on the front of no Palestinian state, no other state between Israel and Jordan. And more or less that Jordan is where the Palestinians should be. But they've had the vision that they will give local autonomy to the Palestinians, autonomy over their persons but not over their land. And unfortunately, the Oslo, which the Palestinian leadership accepted, runs on these lines. And I think one of the great dangers of the Oslo and what followed Oslo, which is the Clinton, Barak and Arafat meetings, did a lot of harm because it convinced the Israelis on false grounds that Israel did everything it could to offer a generous offer to the Palestinians, and the Palestinians refused, and therefore this is proof, if proof is needed, that the Palestinians do not want to make peace with Israel and only want the utter destruction of Israel, which is not true, because the Palestinians, certainly by the time of the negotiations, which started in 91, were reconciled with a two-state solution, and the majority would have been very happy with the two-state solution. Now the situation has moved on. What is going to be the solution? As far as I'm concerned about the land, I think the land is better off not divided. I think whatever the solution, it should not be divided as such. But at the same time, I cannot imagine a solution where the Palestinians and the Israelis are together in government because of many reasons. The experiences of both is very different. The experience of government in each case is very different. So my preferred solution is one along the lines of the European community, where the entire Levant, the entire region from Turkey onwards, which of course was one unit during the Ottoman times, and that's not that long ago. It's only, is it less than 100 years ago? And then it makes all the sense in the world, because we can get the water from Turkey, we can join forces and make the place really a huge, better place, and there can be cultural autonomy for everybody within that whole region. I think ultimately it will come to that, because anything less than that, I mean, small states are going to be less and less feasible anyway. But I might not live to see it. So.
Thank you very much.
Wondering if you have Israeli readership, whether your book sells in Israel, and that's really the preliminary to my main question, is whether you would think it possible for Jews and Palestinians to walk together, because that would be, I mean, walking is a very companionate thing, but it's also a very political thing, as we've experienced in this country with the right to roam and so on.
3 of my books were translated and published in Hebrew in Israel. This one hasn't yet, but I know that it's being sold in a bookstore, a major bookstore in Tel Aviv, and also in Jaffa, interestingly enough. In the previous books, I had many letters from Israelis expressing what they thought about the book and saying how happy they were to understand what's going on the other side. In this case, I haven't had any letters from Israelis. Walking together, well, you know, memory is always very short, because until the late 80s, it was possible for everybody to walk in the land, and with a sense of security and no risk and so on. In the early 80s, there was an Israeli anthropologist who was writing a series of articles for Haaretz, the major Israeli newspaper, in which he was walking with Jews and Arabs, Israelis and Palestinians all over the land. And he said, would I walk with him? And I said yes, and we went and walked in some of the areas that I describe in the book, and we had a lovely time, and we didn't think twice about it. There was no issue then. But you know, now it's just like the settlers are people who claim to be guardians of the land, or the true owners of the land. They care less about the land ultimately, and are not coming to be friendly either to the land or to the people who are living on the land. And so whenever they walk with guns, and if they see a Palestinian, then the Palestinian is an enemy, and they have to and there are many of them who walk around in order to make trouble. I mean, certainly in the Hebron area, where even school children going to school have to be protected to get to their school, and then the herdsmen are given very, very hard time because they're trying to move them away. So it's there is definitely a core group of very violent Israeli settlers who have all the wrong intentions about the future and about their place in the land.